Almost every single man, when they get started on their journey in their life, especially when they're younger, they often look to people that they emulate. They often look to their teachers, maybe somebody online that they've seen that they like, that they want to become like in the future. And I know for myself, when I was a younger man, I was so inspired by a lot of these people that I saw online that I wanted to follow the way that they had lived their lives. And so I saw a stark contrast between what I had seen online and what I knew was possible versus the peers that I was around in high school and in college. And it led me on a really interesting journey because I knew that there was this giant rift, this giant time gap into who those men were that I emulated versus where I was at that time. And in my life, when I was a lot younger, I spent a long period of time asking myself who I was. And it occupied a long period of time in my life. Because what I did was I went around and I observed my reality and I said, "Oh, these people, they are forming themselves to a group identity because maybe that group identity is helping them express themselves better, more authentically." And so in my life, I went around and I sought different group identities. I was a skater. Okay. I had a band. I started a fraternity when I was in college. And each one of those times, I found a part of myself in those groups. When I started a fraternity, I found my leadership role. When I was skateboarding, I found a deeper sense of health and intimacy with my body. When I was in a band, I found a deeper state of expression of love and transcendence through creativity. But I never was able to really find who I was. And it took me on a very deep journey of understanding why I'm here. And I looked around and I saw so many of my peers. I wouldn't necessarily call them some of my friends, but I saw a lot of my peers, and they really seemed to be thriving in their life. They seemed to be getting good grades. They seemed to be getting all the hot girls. They seemed to be in good shape. They seemed to be doing all of these things that I wanted, yet simultaneously felt like when I tried to emulate them, I felt so fake in my life. I felt like a shell of who I knew that I was. But I didn't know any better. I thought to myself, well, this is what reality must be. If I'm emulating the way that these people are behaving, and yet I feel like I'm in a shell of myself, then this is what life must be like. And as I went on and I started feeling this way, I started to ask myself, is this really what life is supposed to be like? Am I supposed to be a shell of a human being, pretending to be somebody that I'm not, doing things that I think are going to make me happy and feel fulfilled and feel loved and feel valued, but really only scratch the surface? And it took me on a really, really long journey, of well over a decade. And I traveled the world and I studied under mentors and I read hundreds of books and watched countless hours of lectures and challenged myself on the deepest ways possible and understood the archetypes of human expression and became deeply intimate with how they showed up in my life and why they did and how I interface with other people and how they interface with me and how my emotions reacted in certain situations. And I sort of looked at my life as this gigantic experiment, if you will. And I felt like what I was doing was almost in a way just totally wasting time. Like I saw my peers from high school and college, for example, and they seemed to be having a great job and they were getting married and they had kids and they seemed to be doing the thing that everybody was doing, and they seemed to be really happy and thriving. And I continually thought to myself, I was like, there has to be something wrong with me. There has to be something that I'm missing, something that I haven't figured out yet, that everybody else must have got the memo, but I didn't get the memo somehow. And so I just kept going deeper and getting more intimate with myself and falling in love with the process of the mystery of coming to understand who I was and my truest identity and my truest self. And it took me a long time. And I felt like I was struggling and grasping onto a sense of identity that was constantly changing because of new information and new challenges and new things that came up in my life, that I could never feel like I was finally like, okay, I've arrived. Here I am. This is why I'm here. And this is what I'm supposed to do in my life. And it gave me this great sense of anxiety because for years I was like, am I ever going to come to a place of arrival in my life? Am I going to come to a state of peace from all of this seeking? And as the time went on and I went deeper into myself and I became more empowered with my understanding as to how reality functions itself, I looked back on the peers that I wouldn't necessarily say emulated, but I was kind of in awe with, that they somehow seemed to have figured it out at a very young age. But I noticed a very interesting thing in them. I could see the senescence in their face. I could see them rapidly aging. I could see them sicker. I could see them angrier. I could see them losing the light in their eyes. It was almost as if something had turned off in their brains. While when I looked at myself, I seemed to have preserved this vitality that I had at the same time when I was spending time with them. And I wondered what was going on. Why was I reacting this way? Why was I actually becoming progressively more and more in love with my life, more and more in love with who I could become, more and more in love with the man that I saw myself as when I was a younger man, when I was in my early 20s, that now I finally saw 10 years later? Why is it that I love the man that I am now even more than when I did when I was younger? And why is it that I saw the opposite in the men that I spent time with now? And I came to the conclusion that it was because they chose a trajectory that was given to them. They chose a path in which society had molded them into, where they didn't allow their own sense of sovereignty. They didn't allow their own sense of agency to guide them to higher and greater and better and more actualized versions of themselves, because they didn't allow themselves to come to the conclusion that they're so much more than the role that they play. And now I have so many of my peers asking me how I'm able to be living a dream. I literally, every day, I feel like I'm living a dream where I'm around people that I love, people that support me. My life is filled with grace and so much fun and so much excitement and so much expansion. And I don't think I did anything different. I don't feel like my life was anything different than anybody else. And then when I reflect on the decisions that most other people made in their lives, I realized that it was the complete opposite of what almost everybody did. And now I've been given opportunities and been introduced to people, have new relationships, have new streams of income that have created so much abundance and so much meaning and so much fulfillment in my life that I would not have been able to have created or cultivated if I had not dug to the very core and the very depth of my being and deep understanding of who I was as a soul. And now, because I've spent so much time in the depth of the foundation, life becomes so much easier and graceful. This is what I call the late bloomer syndrome. For year after year after year, I saw all the people that I emulated online. They were doing the total opposite of what everybody told them that they needed to do. Even the self-help gurus. A lot of the self-help gurus are like not really given the best information because they're in this hustle culture, they're in this hustle mindset. They're in this work way too hard to the bone and gassing out and burning out. And I realized that in order to really become the man that I needed to be, I needed a long period of time really coming into myself and intimately understanding who I am and why my soul chose to become a human. And if you're watching this video and this resonates with you, and you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're saying, where'd all the time go? What happened? It was at that inception, at that point in your life, when you chose to live the life that somebody else told you that you needed to be and never listened to your inner calling. Because every single human being has a deep inner calling, and it takes time to understand what that is. And it's scary to understand what that is because it means taking away a lot of the things that don't serve you anymore, which in general cause you a lot of comfort and a lot of stasis and a lot of complacency. And so the beautiful news is that there's always time to change. That even if you didn't go through a path similar to me, if you choose to begin to follow the path of your soul, you will find that your life will become so much more graceful. And if you're still on the journey of coming into who you are, just know that eventually the depth of the foundation that you have been building year after year after year after year after hard knock after hard knock after hard knock is conditioning your body and your mind and your soul to show up as the powerful leader that you're meant to be in your life. Because every single person has that inner power within them. And the way to continually ignite that inner fire is by attuning back within and remembering your deepest state of authenticity. Your deepest state of authenticity that's beyond any social conditioning, beyond any trauma, beyond any stressed out nervous system, beyond any impression that's been imprinted on your mind that is pulling you in a direction that you know is against what you're supposed to do, but you're doing it anyway because of fear. Just know that all you have to do is choose to be the exception and align with what that path looks like every day. And then you will begin to deepen your foundation. Because if you want to become a powerful person in the world, really hear me on this. If you want to become a powerful person in the world, you must have a deep, deep foundation of truth. You must have a deep foundation of virtue. You must have a deep foundation of the principles of reality themselves. Because every single skyscraper has a very, very deep foundation. Because if you're very cerebral all the time, and you have a lot of knowledge, and you have a lot of internal power, but no way to channel it and express it like a laser point, it will just be like a tornado. And reeling in that power, reeling in that knowledge, reeling in that experience, reeling in that core thing that you uniquely show up as a super laser point, is what's going to make you that powerful person that you know that's inside of you. And don't cry over spilled milk, okay? If you're starting now and you know that this is resonating with you and you know you want to go on a path that's more fulfilling in your life, that's called with a deeper state of your inner essence, just know that when you make that switch in your brain, things are going to happen a lot faster for you. It's going to be like magic. Because everything in life is trying to harmonize back to truth, back to stasis, back to the universal flow, the Tao, if you will. And you are part of that essence. You're not separate from it. And if you choose to align with that universal cosmic flow of grace, things will happen exponentially faster than you can ever even imagine. But that's because you've chosen the path of faith. You've chosen the path less taken. You've chosen the path that requires you to look within and look in the mirror and say, no matter what's going on, no matter what happens to my life, no matter how much debt I get into, no matter how many broken relationships I've gone through, no matter how many mental breakdowns or freakouts that I've gone through, as long as I know deeply, deeply down inside that I'm in alignment with my own integrity, it will work out. That's the foundation. And that takes a lot of very, very serious inner work to get to that point, because you will not be given true power if you don't have the foundation to harness in the power itself, because it will knock you over. It's physics. If you have a really, really high tower with nothing to ground it in, with just a little bit of wind, it's going to knock it over, yeah? And it's the same with you. It's the same with you. So it's never too late to start on that journey. By the grace of God, I started a lot earlier than I did later. But it's never too late, because you don't want to die knowing that you could have done that when you chose not to, because finding comfort in the discomfort of mediocrity was easier for you than choosing the path of excellence and being the exception and being the inspiration that everybody wants to look up to and being the man that you see on that social media platform that the younger men and women look up to. That's the path you must take. That's the path that all of those people that I emulated took, and that you can take too. It's a choice. It's a daily choice, every day. And there's no other way around it. But know that it's not a scary choice. It's only a scary choice if you continually identify with a false sense of who you think you are, rather than merging into the truth of who you actually are. And by coming into the state of understanding who you actually are, that's the real depth. That's the real inner journey. That's why you became a human, to understand why we're here in the first place.